Thebe Ikalafeng. According to the Mail and Guardian, he is South Africa's Mr. Brand. And I say he's the GOAT in marketing and in branding. And that is the greatest of all time, ladies and gentlemen. But before we start today's session, there's a tradition that we follow here at the Pattern Brands Dialogues. And this is significant in showing that we started with the dialogues. Pay attention and listen to this.
It's Pat on Brands. Watch how you branded, man. A pat on the back is a pat from the man. Let it be branded, man. A pat from the pat is a pat on the brand. If it's enormous, flawless, gorgeous, don't be cautious, cordless. Making a move, making a hustle, and making a borders. Watch how you branded, man. A pat on the back is a pat from the man.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The Pattern Brands Dialogues have officially started. I understand that Mr. Ikalafeng has prepared a presentation for us to enjoy. And those that are live on Instagram, I'm going to turn the screen around so that you can also be able to see the screen. And Mr. Ikalafeng is going to go live.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you, South Africa. Thank you, Africa. I thought, it's a good time to reflect on where we are as brands, and particularly this time during the COVID crisis that we have. So Pat asked me to prepare a bit of my thoughts on how we build brands through this crisis. In 1903, something phenomenal happened. The Wright brothers introduced us to the whole concept of flying. We could fly, so something incredible happened. But of course, typical of us, we started skidding off the runway. And skidding off the runway, we had the Great Depression of 1939. And at that time, as you can see, a lot of people are out of jobs, and their savings and everything else are decimated. And of course, who would forget, in 1945, when during the World War II, dropping of the bomb on Hiroshima, it's almost destroyed. I'm going to show that my volume. It's almost destroyed the nation and just put the whole world at notice. And of course, 2008, we had a massive financial crisis, which decimated people's savings and destroyed in many ways the economies of the world. We are still recovering from that crisis. We never forget the history of South Africa, which destroyed a country, and we had the whole world against South Africa. So how does one recover from these many crises that we were faced with at the beginning of this century? David Thoreau once said, all misfortune is but a stepping stone to great fortune. So there is never, ever, ever a wasted crisis. Out of some crises comes some great stuff. Beethoven. When Beethoven was faced with the prospect of just when his career was about to take over, to take off, and he was faced with a crazy prospect of losing his hearing. He says, how do I create without hearing what I create? The man went into a depression, but he decided, let me get out of this depression and start creating. And not focusing on depression, but rather focusing on the creativity.
And of course, 1967, Chris Bonner.
I'll have in the world. It gave the world an opportunity to be able to live again. And 1969, as Neil Armstrong stood on top of the moon and says, this is but a small step for man, but one giant leap for mankind. So we're ever and for always inspired by that time. Because 1991, without the internet. The foundation of the internet was going to change how this world was. Folks, the financial crisis of 2008 wasn't happening. Because out of that, we've got Instagram, we've got WhatsApp. I can't imagine how today we'd live without any of those technological innovations. So even the crisis of a recent memory of a recent time, out of those came some incredible innovations. Here we go again. Just when you thought we've had it all, every 100 years, a massive pandemic. Now we've got Corona. And everywhere else, countries are scurrying. I want to know, how do we move from here? How do we overcome here? We in Africa are just at the beginning of this. We're just at the beginning trying to understand how do we balance the economic impact of this as well as the health challenges of what we're facing. Everywhere you go around the world today, there's a call to keep safe, to stay home, to cover up against the spread of the disease. We are in a lockdown. Not just here in South Africa, we're in a lockdown everywhere else in the world today. I think 2/3 or 90% of America is in a lockdown. Most of the continent is now on a lockdown. We are in a lockdown. We are in a shutdown, but we are not locked out of our thinking. We're not locked out of our creativity, but we're in uncharted territory in a way. And it's uncharted territory, not like Tylenol in 1982, when, just 7 people were died. We are talking 60, 70,000 people dying just today. Tylenol was just 7 people because a human being had laced the tablets. Who would forget in South Africa, our favorite sausages, polony, listeriosis, they created a crisis for Tiger brands. And of course, Tiger brands struggled a little bit in terms of how they respond out of that, just like Tylenol struggled as well, the fourth figure. I think what one can see is that in the last couple of crises that we had, from the Tylenol to Figo to listeriosis, just carelessness, human being, carelessness, bad response in many cases, terrible response by the companies, terrible response by the leaders at that time. But Corona has got a devastating impact on us. Who would have thought we'd reach a time where, from a South African travel, we tell people, do not travel now. Because it's the right thing to do. Don't travel now. Be safe, stay home, so we can travel later. Imagine how this pandemic has devastated the one thing where, in the South African perspective, which contributes almost 10% of the GDP. You go to other countries like Seychelles, 40, 50% of their GDP depends on this. So travel is an important contributor to the economy. But we're telling people, don't travel now. Wimbledon is cancelled. Tokyo Olympics. The PSL is cancelled. My favorite, Formula One. This year I was going to go to Formula One. I thought this was the 1 year I'm going to do a couple of races that I haven't done yet. I went to Liverpool recently, and I thought I'm going to go back now for the crowning moment when Liverpool finally gets this. The 30 years. It's not going to happen. Folks, this is not some serious crisis. These are small things. That's why they're easy to postpone. We can postpone Wimbledon, can postpone the Olympics, can postpone PSL, can postpone the Premier League, can postpone F1. They'll be here next year. They'll be here. The beautiful beaches of Zanzibar. They'll be there next year. We can get there next year. But we cannot recover. 100 billion that the airlines are going to lose. 100 billion the airlines are going to use to coronavirus, to COVID-19. Durban, empty, like many other places. Do you know what's so difficult about this COVID-19, coronavirus? What's so difficult about it? Is in our continent how we balance the idea of trying to keep people safe, but also ensure that the people can earn a living. How do you tell the taxi drivers, the market men and women from Lagos to Langa, that they cannot sell because they sell enough just to make food for the day? How do you tell them they must stop? But yet we know that's the right thing to do. What a heartbreaking moment when Grant Patterson cried on 702. He was crying on 702 because he knew the devastation of this virus. He knew that he wouldn't be able to pay salaries again at Edgar's. We all grew up with Edgar's, Edcon, Edgar's, Jet. They're all going to be out there. And he says, we're not going to survive this. Broke down everybody. TFG says, I don't even have money for rent. I'm not going to pay rent. I'm just not going to pay rent. Trouble. Trouble. We never thought in our time we will see unemployment like we've seen. America was what? Under 3-4% unemployment. Okay, we here in our continent, we used to 30, 40, 50% unemployment, but 10 million people filed for job losses last week alone in the US. 10 million. How are they going to recover from 10 million losses? Buckle up, folks. Buckle up, because we're just getting started in this continent. Projections are just South Africa alone. We are here until August. So if you're feeling a bit cabin fever, if you don't like your company, if you don't like your house, you don't like your clothes, you don't like hanging around at home, start getting used to it. Start getting used to it. We're going to be here for a bit, for the good of all of us. What crisis? What crisis? Everybody is going on about a crisis. Folks, there's a vaccine coming. Not in 18 months. There's a vaccine for your brand right now. Not in 18 months. Right now, there's a vaccine. Of course, they say that, some of the people are not going to survive. They say tourism, I think tourism is going to, it will come back. We will come back. Aviation, we're in trouble, but we'll come back. Automobile, who drive, who needs a car? Stay at home, we're home. I haven't left my house since the lockdown started. Today was the first time I went to the front door just to go see if the lock is still working outside, or you still have a lock rather. Universities are all closed. The people who are thriving, the medical, the food, the healthcare, ICT, they say internet usage up 70% or so in the continent. E-commerce, if you got cabin fever, the least you could do is just set an order. But who's going to deliver? Is that an essential service? So we have to rethink. We're on Zoom Live today. The stock is rising because this is the new future. This is our new reality. This is our today. Because today I don't need to go out. Here I am, I'm sitting at home. I can talk to everybody. I don't need to get out of the house at all. I can have all my meetings. I have all my meetings with my team, with my staff every day from home. Question is, do we need the office? Do we need the rent to pay for the office? I can see them, can hear them. We can get the work done. Times have changed. We have to rethink. How to say, as an African, it's okay. We are used to rethinking. We're used to repurposing ideas. We're used to recycling, reinvigorating, regenerating. It's our thing. Telephone book becomes toilet paper. The shampoo, the dishwashing liquid, so many other things. The use of floss. It's an African thing. It's within us. It's within our ability to be able to just rethink, repurpose, reimagine. That's who we are. That's why Black Coffee, Shimza, and everybody else, they're looking at how do we do lockdown house party. Now the question is, who wants to fill up the stadium? When the best thing to do now really is to fill up the cyber waves, is to technological ways, get everybody online. Black Coffee knows who is to go to Ibiza. We're right here. Ibiza is here. Ibiza is here. G-Star last week had to think about their fashion show. This is a G-Star fashion show. So G-Star, they say, oh, what are we going to do during the lockdown? How do we deal during the lockdown with our people? This is how we deal with it. Send them all the clothes at the houses. Send them the clothes at the houses. They can use their corridors. They can use their corridors as a runway. Who needs to spend money on a runway? Rather spend money on the experience, on the technological experience. Rethinking. Will I buy G-Star after the lockdown? Yeah, maybe I'll start with Tapo jeans first because it's made in Africa. But I'll tell you what, I feel great about G-Star as well. I feel like this brand came to the house. didn't close the mind. Reimagine. Uber said, I can deliver food, but I can use the technology and I can use the infrastructure to deliver essentials to the medical people who are out there. 425,000 people they fed, they deliver stuff to. GM makes ventilators. Reimagine. Louis Vuitton, sanitizers. Samsung says, we're going to take our head office, we're going to create it into a place for people to recover. JetBlue says, we're not just doing quick flights, we're going to use our flights to move medical professionals during the relief efforts. There's a reimagining, there's a repurposing, there's a rethinking about how they use the resources. Even if you're thinking within where you are. PepsiCo says, they're in the business of food and drinks. They're gonna give 50 million food, meals and local humanitarian support. Old Mutual says we are going to spend 50 million on financial relief measures. Standard Bank says we will put your debt on holiday as a student. Ethiopian Airways, Egypt, South African Airways, all of them are saying, let us allow you to postpone your trip so you can have another trip next time and we won't charge you for the change. So brands are being understanding. Folks, all crises are par for the course. When you're dealing with a crisis, plan, acknowledge this one, respond. You know, people are saying that the challenges in America are because they did not plan in advance. Or as Trump used to say many times, what crisis? This thing will be over in a week or two. But it didn't end in a week or two. It wasn't just a simple flu. Acknowledge and respond. You have to respond. Everybody is scurrying now. I tell you what, in our continent has been incredibly exemplary. How President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, responded has been incredible. When he stood out there to announce the lockdown, he wasn't just talking without a plan. He had a plan in mind. He acknowledged the problems that we have. And when he made a response plan for South Africa, it brought in everybody to play. Both business, civil society, citizens. There's been one or two challenges, but I tell you, there hasn't been a better plan. Paul Kagame, with just one or two cases, closed the country. Hage Geingob from Namibia closed the country. There's been some exemplary response here in our continent. Because when you're dealing with a crisis of this nature, you plan, you acknowledge, and you respond. And as a brand, consumers are going to remember you after the crisis. What crisis? Crisis, folks, how you deal with it with clarity. Understand what is your brand about. If you look at how the Old Mutuals, the Standard Banks of all those have responded, they knew the Ubers, GMs. They said, people must be clear what our brand is about, what our values are about. So when we come out of this, they give us a chance to do business with them again. Because they remember, because there was an alignment between the heart, the head, and the hands. Must be able you must be flexible. So you need to have reflex. GM said, we're in the business of cars, but if they're all dead, they won't be able to drive. So let's give them a chance. Let's retool. Let's partner with another business and create ventilators so they can live. Must be able to innovate out of the box. You must be able to understand there's a shared value between you and the stakeholders. If you don't help the customers, the students, All Mutual's investment was quite interesting. They are going to spend the money in feeding school kids. And you say, why are they feeding school kids? They're going to feed school kids because every day in this country and many other countries on the continent, there are children whose only meal is the meal they get at school. Having a shared values understanding that your sustainability and that of the community, who tomorrow that student will become your future customer, integral. Your work must be impactful. Your work must be impactful. Most importantly, be sincere. Be sincere. You can't build a brand on fake morals. You can't build a brand on just trying to survive. Do you know, I was looking at Foschini saying they're not going to pay for their rent. I'm just hoping that if they're not going to pay the rent, they're going to allow the customers as well to forgive the rent or to postpone their rent. Because that's shared value. That's shared value. That's how you deal with a crisis during the brand. That's how you build your brand during the crisis, by remembering what you stand for, by being flexible, having the reflex to be able to adjust, by being innovative, thinking out of the box, by understanding that you've got a shared value with the community, with the stakeholders, by doing stuff that matters, that's got an impact. Stuff that matters. That's significant. Because they say you don't just want to be successful, one thing I believe in, you don't want to be successful, you want to be significant. Because success is for you, but significance is investment in the other, is to matter. I think it's Ted Koppel used to say, all that matters is to matter. Most importantly, authenticity. You must be sincere. That's how you build your brand during a crisis. Because just pounding out ads out there, selling ads and telling us about how great your brand is, how great your business is, it's just marketing. Branding is what they say. And what we want to make sure is when it's all over, they say only great thing about your brand. Because the brands which you're able to do properly during this crisis are the brands that we customers are going to support, are the companies that we job seekers are going to work for, are the companies that us investors are going to put the money in. And that's how you build a brand. Because all that a brand is a promise made and a promise delivered. Let's not let a good crisis go to waste. Thank you. I can't hear you, Pat. I can't hear you speak. Pat, I can't hear you.
All right, cool. Can you hear me now?
I can, Pat. I need to teach you how to use the computer. I'm like an old toppy and I can use this silly thing. You're struggling with this thing, Pat. I'm worried about you.
Yeah, but we're fine now. Thank you so much for that insightful presentation. I really learned a lot, and I think the message that really comes across is the one around repurpose, reimagine, and find new ways of using the resources that we have at our disposal. So I'm gonna try to take some questions from Instagram. If anyone has a question there, please type it. If you are on Zoom right now, please also punch in your questions. This is the time to learn from the best. And I must say, it was worth the wait, Mr. Ikalafeng. I mean, I've been reaching out to you and wanting us to have this session. And this crisis presented an opportunity for us to engage. And I'm extremely grateful for your time. So any questions? Okay, so I'm gonna start because I don't see any questions as yet. People are just sort of giving you compliments of how powerful this engagement was. So I've been getting a lot of calls from brands. There's an echo here. Where is it? Hello? Is this still an echo?
Pat, you are live. You can't say you're live. You're live, Pat. You're live. Your brand is live. Your brand is in crisis. Pat, you're live now.
Oh, cool. So a lot of people have been asking me, like, what should they do with their brands, especially online? Should they post something funny, something witty, or should they also post something that is motive, evokes a certain emotion? So what do you think from a social media perspective? We see how other brands have sort of repurposed their businesses, but from an online perspective, where people are, what sort of content that brands should be putting out there?
you need to stay engaged. You need to stay engaged. I think you've seen how some brands have asked themselves during this time of crisis, how can I create value out of what I know? So GM says, I've got the ability to do this, but I can't do that during the crisis. So how else can I add value? So you have to stay engaged, because out of sight, out of mind, out of sight, I think that's what they say, right? Out of sight, out of mind. That's what they say, right? During a crisis is the time you should be investing in your brand. But of course, the investment is different, and you cannot be tone deaf. So the difference here is you cannot be tone deaf. You have to find ways to invest in a way that makes an impact and in a way that is sincere. You don't just want to be funny. We've got enough time to be funny on our WhatsApp groups. I mean, we all find WhatsApp groups and we're sending out kinds of memes. But I think the time now is not to be funny. Yes, you need to always be who you are and have a sense of humor. But as a brand, the thing you need to do is you need to be engaged. You need to stay in touch with your customers. You need to add value to your life. Understand that I'm stuck here. But am I really stuck, or have I just relocated? So you have to understand, I'm actually not stuck. I have relocated. I've relocated to home. So now you need to rethink, how do I connect with Thebe at home? That's what G-Star has done. They said, how do I connect with him still? They still have to have, are you with me? You look at South African tourism. South African tourism and many other airlines, they came up with campaigns. The campaigns did not say, fly to Mpumalanga, fly to Maputo, fly to Milan, and fly to, they said the ads are saying, we understand that you love to fly. Yeah. We understand that flying is important for the economy, but it is better that you are safe now so you can fly later. So it's about understanding the shared value, because if we all die, we're not gonna fly tomorrow.
Okay. And there's a question from Ash_Kandawa. He's saying, if the lockdown extends to August and some sectors economic activity must resume, which sectors do you think will flourish?
I think I shared, if you look, I'm just going to put it up again for those who are watching. I've shared here some of the sectors which are going to flourish. You know, e-commerce is obviously going to flourish, delivering stuff, but of course it's the e-commerce of the essentials. So the question that's going to happen is, from a government perspective, we're now going to need to rethink from a government, what does essential mean? So essential may not longer be just the food. Essential may need to be expanded, right? So you need to expand our thinking, you need to be creative. That's why I think what you cannot appreciate about this government, about our government, is they have been constantly adjusting the ideas, adjusting their response. ICT is going to flourish. Personal care, because still got to shower, still got to smell goods. Food and processing, medical supplies, but all these other ones, oil and gas, we still have to go out there. All of them are going to come back. Now you have to think, you know, I was listening to the Minister of Education the other day, of Higher Education, and he was saying, I want the universities to tell me, how are they going to teach without a classroom?
Okay. We have another question from Ashraf Gada from SAFM, I assume. And he's asking, what should South Africa or the president do not to waste this crisis?
Not to waste this crisis, I'll tell you what the South African government and all African governments should do. South Africa's incredible positives have come out of this, about this crisis in South Africa. We now know our law and order in South Africa can actually do its job. We actually know we've got potential for South Africans, and this, of course, it can be across the continent as well, to obey the rule of law built on this crisis. We also know that this government can focus their energy and deliver on just one thing, built on this. This is an incredible opportunity for this government, for this country, for all governments and for all countries to build on this. Because for the first time in a long time, or rather for the first time in a long time, we are looking to government for the positives. We're not looking to government to make fun of them. We're not looking to government to ridicule them. We're looking to government as a partner. We are working together.
All right, there's a question from Zoom, Tendai Jangara. He's asking, do you foresee brands focusing on local or global markets post the crisis?
What an interesting question. You know, during apartheid was quite interesting. Apartheid was quite interesting because other than the negative parts about apartheid, for the beneficiaries of apartheid, who were none of us, for the beneficiaries of apartheid, a lot of, it gave them a chance to re-imagine South Africa. Where does ABSA come from? Where does Sasol come from? Where do many of these companies come from? The ESCOMs and all those, where did it come from? They came out of the fact that during the crisis, when South Africa was a pariah state, when nobody wanted to play Sun City to come to South Africa, South Africans, the illegitimate government of South Africa of the time had to think internally. They had to say, how do we create brands from here? That's why there are so many brands in this country, because we were locked in, or this country, not we, because we were in there, because they were locked in and they had nowhere else to run, so they had to think it. So that's what we're gonna, that's what's gonna happen. To Tendai's question is a lot of local brands are going to come out of this. You know, every year in the next 2 months, I'll be announcing the top brands in the continent, which I've done for the last 10 years in our Brand Africa 100. So on Africa Day, which is 25 May, on a Monday, when I announce the top 100 brands, I'd be quite keen to see what are those brands. Because every year for the past 10 years that I've been doing the survey, only on average 20% of the brands that Africans admire are African.
Mm.
We need to turn it around.
Sure.
We need to.
Okay, then we have a.
But we also need to celebrate those global brands which understand who we are.
We have another question from Bronson. He's saying, actually, this is in response to a tweet that's been going around saying a lot of people have lost their jobs. It's just that they don't know it yet. So he's saying the risk faced by many businesses today is whether they will exist tomorrow. How do we give people or employees confidence that the business or the brand will be there tomorrow? This is after the crisis.
Similarly to how companies need to rethink themselves, the employees themselves need to rethink themselves. You know, my team will always tell you, I always tell them that I don't go to the office to go look at the number of hours I've worked. I go to office, when I end my day at work, I always tell them, when I reflect back on the day, I ask myself, did I create value for the organization? Did I create value for everybody? Did I create value? Did I add something to myself, to us, to everybody, to the world? So the employees who are going to thrive into the future are going to be employees who add value, not employees who pick up salaries, employees who create value. Mm. Otherwise, if you are not in the business of creating value, you're in the business of picking up a salary and arriving at 8:30 and leaving at 4:59, your job is over. There's no more jobs left for people like you.
Sure. We have a question from Jerry. I think it's Jerry Mabana asking, what are your views on Moody's downgrade in a time of a crisis like now, and how should South Africa respond?
Moody's, Fitch, all of them are downgrading us. We are already on the floor. We're already on the ground. So let's take all the negatives. We're going to build from here. So my view in life is the rest of the world is in turmoil. It's not just us. Italy is a mess. Spain is a mess. America is a mess. Okay, America and are all the countries in mess. What we need to do, what needs to come out of this crisis, and ask ourselves, how are we going to rebuild this economy? How are we going to rebuild this country? While we do care about the Moody's because they're good for ratings, they're good for trying to access funding and investments and all those, what we can control is our destiny. What we can control is the decisions that we make about the country, the decisions we make about our continent, the decisions we make, how we support our entrepreneurs to create businesses and brands. And those businesses and brands put money into the fiscus, this fiscus that is able to support itself. How we invest in education, how we're creating education that works. I mean, I always say to people, I don't understand this math literacy. What do they teach people at MathLit? How to count change after buying fat cakes? I mean, honestly, people in mathematics, we cannot be as a continent, be the only country which is last in mathematics and last in science.
Yeah.
If people cannot do math and science, they're not going to be able to rebuild the country. We need to invest in math and science. We need to invest in the type of education which will create the type of future we want. If we don't want a positive future, then don't spend money in education. So education, entrepreneurship, and the people.
Okay, so we have a question, we have similar questions on both Instagram and Zoom. And the question is around small businesses. You know, we all know that small businesses do not have the resources or the financial muscle that big business has in terms of maintaining or staying top of mind for of their customers. So what advice would you give a small business owner who's starting out and they've been trying a lot of things, but nothing seems to be working out? And right now, in the midst of a crisis, and things that seems to be getting tougher by the day. What sort of, from a branding perspective, what advice can you give a small business owner right now?
You know, great brands are about 2 or 3 things. First thing is about clarity. Are you clear about what you do, what business you're in? Because sometimes a lot of the businesses that people start are businesses that they saw somebody else sell better samosas, so they also want to sell samosas. So the question is, are they clear about what they sell? The second one is, how different are they from what everybody else sells? Why are you in the business? How different are you? And how consistent are you? And are you adding value? Is the business having an impact? This time is a difficult time for everybody. People are going to suffer. You know, listen to Donald Trump, the way he reflects on the challenges that America is going to face this week. You know, he says this is going to be the Pearl Harbor week. He says this is going to be the most difficult week. He says people are going to die. So similarly, some small businesses are going to go down. But I think when they go down, the question should be, when they get up, are they going to get up smarter? I think as Mandela said, you know, it's not a problem to fall. The question is, how do you rise? So this is this time doing 1 day is 42 days. The question is, how are we going to get up as small businesses? How are we going to get up as small businesses? How are we going to reimagine ourselves? And I said to create a crisis about clarity. It's about reflex, about innovation. It's about shared value. How am I adding value? It's about impact.
Do you think the government is effective right now from a communications point of view in terms of communicating the seriousness of this virus?
If they get any more effective, we are going to be over COVID. You know, they have been exemplary. This government has been exemplary. Many African governments have been exemplary. They have done their job, which is to keep us safe. Second, they have communicated. I mean, the president comes out to speak every so often with clear messages. The relevant ministers every day or so are briefing us, updating us. We cannot fault the government from communication. The only challenge they have is the resources. We may not have enough resources to be able to do what we need to do to ensure that this kind of devastation is not so bad.
Okay. There's a question around data cost. You know, you've been saying that people need to be using the internet to connect. You gave the example of G-Star, how they sort of did their fashion show online and stuff like that. So in a South African context, how will brands connect with its consumers given that data is so expensive in South Africa? This is Nolo asking the question.
MTN and Vodacom in South Africa, well, South African data costs to start with are over the top. They are ridiculous. They are almost extortionist. We know that for a fact. I know that for a fact because I've been to every country in the continent, and having been to every country, I can tell you for a fact, our costs are too high. So the companies have to come to play. So Vodacom and MTN have announced that they're cutting 30 to 50% of their data rate. What they need to go a little further now. They need to now ask themselves, how do I introduce better incentives and reward for people who are using data? You know, in education, there's lots of talk about zero-based, zero-rated SIM cards so that the kids can access learning online.
Yeah.
But I think they also then going to have to think better in terms of, from a business perspective, how do they help businesses to stay in business, to use? Because, you know, is it better to extort $100 for what? I don't even know what the data costs are. Is it better to extort $100 for Meg, let's say, for example, out of 1,000 people, or is it better to charge them 20 out of 1 million? That's that concept.
Yeah,
they have to think about it.
Okay, we have a question on Instagram. Tudo_Ngosi. How should alcohol brands be repositioning themselves or their messages during this tough time?
You know, sorry, Pat, you know, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do lines. I'm like the worst. I'm the worst person to understand that question, right? Because, you know, I'm thinking on Cape Town on the weekend, they couldn't buy cigarettes. I feel for them because they're addicted to them. The people who drink alcohol, they can't get alcohol because it's not an essential. Well, I mean, having said what I've said, in the 90s, remember, alcohol brands were stopped from marketing directly. They stopped from putting up billboards and selling advertising. They have to rethink. They said, now we have to think differently about how we engage experientially with customers. So now the question in the digital era is, how do I take my brand to them? But of course, you can't smoke your cigarette, I guess, or drink your alcohol on the computer, right? During the lockdown, it's a problem. But I think the lockdown is an opportunity for them to build better relationships, to build communities online, so that when the time comes for them to drink and to smoke and to do everything else, they're able to connect to them better and to have built a relationship that will last longer. Hopefully, they should have stocked up. That's about the only hoarding they should have done, the drinkers and the smokers. Why did they not hoard up, eh? They were busy cleaning out the bread and the meal, all the things which they could have found afterwards. They should have been cleaning up the alcohol and the cigarettes. Sorry. But anyway, I'm glad for the short time now that I was watching the Minister for South Africa saying that there's law and order. The crime stats are down. It's a good time to be an African.
We have a question here. It says, I'm a doctor at Charlotte Matleke. Working from a medical point of view, how much should you give without making it seem like you are in a lecture room? I'm not sure if I understand that question.
How much?
How much should you give without making it seem like you are in a lecture room?
Well, I think hopefully I understand.
He's a medical doctor.
Hopefully I understand him. Hopefully I'm hoping that he's probably asking the question, how does he share his knowledge without being seen to be preachy and to be lecturing people? The thing that we need to learn in this country, and particularly South Africa, and that we can learn from other countries. You know, if you go to Tanzania, I went to Tanzania once, and the president of Tanzania spoke to about 2,000 people, including people from about 80 countries, and he spoke in Kiswahili. Why? Because everybody else there speaks Kiswahili.
Yeah.
The problem that we have here is we're trying to speak big English. We need to understand it because it's not our language. So the point of that is, as a doctor, how does he take medicine and reduce it to its basic concepts and teach people about how to take care of themselves without ridiculing them, without that woman I saw somewhere in this country who was putting people like monkeys and ridiculing them. She should be found and
Speaking of monkeys, is there any brand that is missing the mark right now during this lockdown? This is a question from Original Ramsey.
You know, in the main, a lot of the brands have been really trying to do a good job. A lot of brands have been trying a good job. Without naming and shaming, the brands which are not doing a good job are the brands which are trying to sell first, without trying to ask themselves a question: how can we sincerely make an impact to help contribute to a shared future? So the brands which are not making an impact are those brands which are missing the marks, are those brands which are truly not which are trying to sell to us and not trying to solve the problem. Because remember, why does a business start? Why does a brand start? Why does a small business start a brand? Why does anybody start anything? To solve a problem.
All right. Back on Zoom, there's a question from Dumi Masang raised his hand. So we're going to give him an opportunity to say something.
Look at Dumi's brand. Look at Dumi's brand. How awesome is that? Made in Africa. Hello, Dumi.
Unmute.
Can you hear me?
Hi, Dumi.
Dumi, I can hear you. I can also see your brand. I can see you, Dumi.
How are you, Prati?
I'm good, my boys. How are you?
I'm good. It's been a while.
We are still here, Dumi. We are just an email and a phone call and a Zoom away now.
So I initially asked a question about how smaller brands can be able to navigate the storm, even they don't have the cash reserves, just like the big brands. That's part one. And the second one is, I've noticed that within Africa and South Africa primarily, there's a certain lack of information and knowledge on navigating the e-commerce or online space. How do we get smaller brands to kind of adopt this practice to make them more efficient?
To be a very good question. And let me start by first putting out an example. There's a small furniture shop that started a sale between the 27th of, I'm not going to put the name out because I think I'm selling them out, between the 27th of March and the 17th of March. And I asked Justin, the owner, I said, Justin, how are you putting a sale during lockdown? He says, I want to collect the money now, and then I'll deliver the product on the 18th, but I want to move the product in the store. So he's got a lockdown sale. The same way that, you know, the big brands like DSTV ask themselves a question, how do we keep content fresh while people are on lockdown? People are now using their phones, their computers, they're creating content from home. G-Star, same thing. Take the idea from the big brand, scale it down to yourself. Now, if you don't have the money, get the money in advance. Like yourself, you've got stock, you supply people, collect the cash now, deliver on the 17th. And of course, the second question you asked, the question about, was the question you asked about information on e-commerce and all those. This is a perfect time to learn. What else are most people doing? We're here, we are the meeting, we are, if you go on Instagram, if you go on WhatsApp, they are sharing crazy, stupid jokes. We are doing memes. It shows we have actually a very creative nation and continent. If we can create those things, isn't there an opportunity to learn how to use our technological ability better? So when you come out of the session, the e-commerce technology becomes the way we're going to use to connect, to sell, and to build our brand.
All right, we're gonna take another hand on Zoom. Warabile.
Unmute. Warabile must unmute.
Arabile. Warabile. She's shy now. I'm gonna take another one from my first Ghana. Allowed to talk.
My first Guinea.
Hello.
Hello, my first Guinea.
Hi, how are you?
Very good, are you?
I'm great, thanks. No, first of all, I'm a she. You actually read my question on Instagram. I was trying to hassle Pat to like read my question. But what I actually wanted to say is, on my platform, I give out a lot of information with regards to medical things, right? But also, I don't want to inundate people with jargon. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, I don't want to inundate people with medical jargon. So I just want to know, from a brand point of view, how much do you give the lay person without that whole, you know what, I'm speaking big English, which is not my intent. My intent is to inform.
You know, hopefully today, I was able to speak the business of branding and crisis management in the simple English, because that's how I approach generally everything. And I tell you what, when I did economics at WITS first time, I didn't understand what they were talking about. Then I arrived in the US, I didn't understand what they're talking about. I didn't understand those graphs. I didn't understand anything. Then I arrived in the US and I met an Indian professor for economics. And he spoke economics to me, to a whole class. He's the only teacher who, when he finished, we gave him a standing ovation, because he spoke economics to us using everyday examples that we can relate to. So the lesson that I learned then, and why ever since then I can't speak big marketing English and I can't speak any big English to start with, is always to speak to people in a way that they can relate, using examples that they see every day, and not trying to demonstrate your command of the medical or your technical language, but rather show them the command of their problem and your ability to speak to them in a way that connects and them to understand. Because the whole purpose of communication is to get across a point.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that, really.
And brevity. Speak enough, not all day like I have been now for an hour.
Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Cool. I think we're gonna take last question. This is from Sefate Chris on Instagram, saying why we Africans don't take our fellow brothers' brands seriously.
Because we don't have a great self-image of ourselves. Do you know, Pat, you would, but you won't remember because I think you were not born yet. So in those earlier days when I was winning GQ Best Dressed and putting up all those custom-made suits and all those, then I switched from all that, right? And I started dressing African brands like I'm wearing now, Okunoren from Nigeria. And I started dressing, you know, this hat was designed by Tepo Jeans, working with the guys here from Simon and Mary. And when I switched to all those, my African people, South Africans in particular, used to say to me, but Thebe, what happened to those beautiful sleek suits you used to wear? And they said, you know, used to be so packaged, but now you just like African cloths and all those things. Because you know what they don't understand, right, Pat, is because to them, to have arrived is to be seen in made in France, made in Italy, made in England, made in America. Whereas for a French person, to have arrived is to wear French. If you look at the lady of France, she only wears Louis Vuitton, Hermes, and all those brands from there. You go to Italy, the only way to have arrived for them is to wear Italy. To have arrived in Africa is to wear African. To have arrived, you know, I don't post fancy food on my Instagram, as you've seen. I don't go to fancy restaurants and put up fancy food. I post pap and milk, like I put fufu and milk. I will post runners, I put chicken runners. I post the things we grew up with, because all of us,
yeah,
that's how we are. That's how we are. So the first step for us, in order for us to be able to support and buy African brands, is to understand ourselves, to acknowledge ourselves, and to assert ourselves. Because we are Africans, and we should not be running away from Africa. And until the day we come back home, we will not be able to take home to the world.
That's very profound. And on that note, I think we've reached the end of the second episode of the Pattern Brands Dialogues Online. Thank you so much for finally making the time to share your knowledge with us on this platform. And for those that tuned in for the first time, so what we're trying to do with the Pattern Brands Dialogues is to actually get industry captains to come in and share their stories and inspire us, particularly the young professionals, the young entrepreneurs who are still trying to figure things out. And I mean, you can tell with the caliber of the storytellers that come through on this platform, they share immense experiences, and it's something that I personally do not take for granted, because isiZulu sithi indlela ebuzwa kwabaphambili.
Pat, 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 pat.